So this is my Crackle with Power, or Crack Power, or I just call it my Crack deck, or Fire Power. But it's Crackle with Power on deck. The win con is Crackle with Power first. We want to have 8 mana so that we can deal 10 damage to 2 targets. That's how the card works. So you'll be paying 2 mana for each of the X's that's on this card, plus the 2 red mana. So that's a total of 6. So it'd be 2, 2, 2, and then 2 red mana. So it's 8 altogether. And 8 mana, you do, as you can see, 5 times X damage to each of up to X targets. So you typically, since you're only paying 2 for each X, you're only doing 10. You're doing 10 damage, right? Because 5 times 2 is 10 to 2 targets. So one will be your opponent, and one will be something else like a creature or something. Sometimes that comes in handy when you need to survive a turn. Because maybe, let's say your opponent has 20 life, and you do this, or you dealt them 10 damage, they still have 10 left. You still got to survive a turn, right? You still got to survive a turn to at least try to play another copy of the following turn for game. So playing 2 of these, one after the other, can win you the game once you're at that mana level, which shouldn't be that hard to get to 8 mana, since we do have some mana, some treasure token cards in here, and an engine to produce as much as we can. So let's go through the list real quick. 2 copies of Sanitarium Skeleton, 2 copies of Dawnbringer Cleric, 2 copies of Plundering Barbarian, 4 copies of Ardent Elementalist, 2 copies of Goblin Gang Leader, 2 copies of Orcas, Prince of the Undead, 4 copies of Poison the Cup, 4 copies of Burn Down the House, 4 copies of Crackle with Power, 4 copies of Pestilent Cauldron, 2 copies of Teleportation Circle, 4 copies of Zario, Archduke of Avernus. So we got 4 Plains, 4 Blightstep Pathway, 4 Haunted Ridge, 4 Crag Crown Pathway, 4 Rockfall Vale, and 4 Needle Verge Pathway. So that's 24 lands. And so, like I said, Crackle with Power is your main win con. Typically, the goal is to get your opponent down to 10. It's not too hard to get your opponent down to 10 in life. In the first 4 or 5 turns. Especially if you're on curve, swinging, play a 1-drop, then a 2-drop, then a 3-drop, and then a 4-drop. Preferably this one because it gets you more attackers, potentially deal more damage. Right? We got stuff that can help us deal damage, like Burn Down the House. The Red Devil tokens can deal 1 damage. Then we got Zario. It can make a 1/1 double token. When it dies, it deals damage. So we got some burn effects in here. So of course we have Sanitarium Skeleton. Discard fodder for Pestilent Cauldron or for anything else. I went up against a hand destruction deck, and I just kept discarding the skeleton for the effects, and just kept adding them back to the hand. And then, of course, the fact that the one black to play him, you can trigger his effect to add him back to the hand. So we have 4 mana, add him back to your hand with his effect, play him for 1, and you have a reusable chump blocker. So always guarantee to have a creature to block with, a potential attack with, or use for card effects. So that's what we have 2, just a attack card. We have Dawnbringer Cleric. We have him here for, all 3 of his effects are useful, and his toughness is not bad. His Cure Wound effect, where you gain 2 life, that's always useful, because you're trying to live long enough to have 8 mana so you can play your win con. So life gain is always important. And then the ability to destroy enchantments, because there's been some scenarios where opponent's enchantments were a problem. So this comes in handy. I've used this a couple times to get rid of stuff like pacifism or something similar to it, or just a problematic enchantment like unnatural growth or something like that. Like letting your opponent having enchantments can be a problem, especially if it's an enchantment deck. I use this to destroy a something of silence. I'm trying to remember the name. Curse of Silence. That's what it was. Curse of Silence. So I use this to destroy it. And it has the ability to expel target card from a graveyard. So there's some graveyard hate. So that's useful, especially against like disturbed decks and stuff like that. So it's a nice little tech card in there. Nice little tool that you can use. We have Plundering Barbarian. Barbarian already has the ability to destroy target artifacts, so we already take advantage of that. So any deck that tends to try to use artifact equips or just artifacts in general, I use this against it. Sometimes I use this to destroy my opponent's treasure tokens, so that way they don't mana ramp. Right? And of course, this has the ability to create a treasure token when it comes to the type. So this will help us ramp up to 8 or more mana. The more mana we have, the better, the stronger our Crackle with power is. So this combined with teleportation, of course, you see a lot of these cards have enter the battlefield effects. Of course, teleportation allows us to abuse them over and over and over again and keep using them over again. So this can constantly destroy artifacts, constantly make tokens. This can constantly give you life or destroy enchantments every turn, or exile something for your opponent's graveyard every turn. So we have a lot of useful effects for different matchups. We have Ardent Elements, of course. Chances of the field, return target instant or sorcery from our graveyard to our hand. This allows us to reuse our Crackle with power. Because sometimes you'll use this for like pay 5 mana, right? You'll put 1 in each of the X's plus 2 red, so 5 altogether, and deal 5 damage to 1 target. So sometimes you'll use this as a kill spell, and being able to add it back to hand is useful. Sometimes if I have to discard it for my opponent's discard effect, or I have to discard for my opponent's discard effect, I typically discard this because I could always add it back with this. And we maxed out on 4 copies to make sure we always can get this back. Just like our board wipe and even our creature destruction card. So definitely need 4 of those. Then we have Goblin Gang Leader. It's a 4-drop that creates 2 1/1 tokens, and it's a 2/2. So altogether, that's 4 power. Sometimes I'll play this, and my opponent swings with a 4/4, and I'll block with all 3 and take down the 4/4. So that's something I do sometimes. Another thing I do with it is obviously I can block 3 attacks with this because you have 2 tokens and creatures. I can block with them. Block potentially 3 attacks to try to get myself an extra turn. Especially if I play this on turn 4. Use this to stall so that way I can get to turn 5, play my 5th land, and play my burn down the house, and then just board wipe my opponent. So that's the synergy with those things. Obviously, it enters the field, makes it 2 tokens. So of course, combined with teleportation, every turn you can make 2 tokens that you can use to battle with. Another cool thing about making tokens, a lot of tokens, is the fact that you can use Azariel's ability +1 effect to give 1 power to the tokens and give them haste, so that way they can't attack in the turn in which they were created. And they'll be stronger, so 2 power haste tokens are always good. Same goes for burn down a house. When you make the tokens and use Zariel's ability, you can make 3 2/1 double tokens that can attack. So synergy there. Then we have Orcas, Prince of the Undead. A lot of times I typically only played it for 4 mana as a 5/3 flying with trample, right? It having flying is useful against angel decks. It has 5 power, so that helps take down most problematic angels or flyers. But the added ability that if I play this with a lot of mana, I can obviously board wipe or return a target creature with total mana cost value X or less from my graveyard onto the battlefield, and then it gains haste and stuff. since most of my creatures tend to be, you know, drops, 2 drops, 3 drops. You know, I got some, you know, a couple 4 drops. And so at most, if I spend 8 mana to play this, you know, I can bring back a Goblin Gang Leader and just make a bunch of tokens, and then they'll have, make 2 tokens, and then of course they'll have haste. So all this, you know, I can attack with all of that. And if I have Zariel in play, I can make him stronger. But using this to bring back Ardent Elementless, so that I can use its ability to, you know, get a sorcery or instant from my graveyard, or bring Dawnbringer back so I can gain life and then use them as a defense chomp blocker. So you get the idea. There's a couple of stuff worth bringing back because they have into the battlefield effects. But of course, I can use this for its -1 ability. Its minus ability. It's minus X ability. So, you know, anything with 1 toughness, I'll have to just pay 1 extra, so it'll be it'll cost 5 just to make everything lose 1 life. 1 toughness, and I'll lose a life every time for every mana I pay X. So if I pay 2 for the X, I lose 2 life. Or I pay 3 for the X, I lose 3 life. But it's worth it if it clears the board, right? So this is another potential board wipe. Then we have Poison the Cup. Destroy target creature. If the spell was 4 toads, right, 2. So you pay 2, put this face down, exile, and then when you want to use it, pay 1 black, 1 of anything to destroy target creature and get to scry 2. And you typically scry to try to get to lands. Sometimes, you know, you don't draw lands consistently, so we do our best to try to, you know, get to those lands because we need those lands to play our win con. Burn down the house, 5 damage to all creatures and planeswalkers. That's useful, you know, being able to hit planeswalkers as well as just hitting a whole bunch of creatures. Take down the toughness. You know, obviously, a basic trick you can do is use Zariel's ability to make a devil token, and then do the burn down a house effect to deal 5 damage to all creatures and planeswalkers. And of course, the devil token, when it's destroyed, it'll deal 1 damage to any target. So if one of your opponent's creatures just so happens to have 6 toughness, which means that they normally will survive this, you can take it down with the effect of the devil token, and you know, take down 6 toughness creature that way. Another thing I like to do is when I already have creatures in play, I attack with them and hope my opponent blocks because their creatures are, you know, bigger, tougher, right? So that way it deals them damage, weakens their toughness, and then play burn down a house to get rid of them. So, little pro tip there. Crackle with the power. You have to pay the same exact mana for each of the X's of this card. So if you're gonna pay, so you have to pay 1 X in order for this to do any damage. Just to even do 5 damage, you have to pay 1 per each X. So that's 3 mana right there, plus the 2 red, and you do 5 damage to 1 target creature or anything. You know, obviously target planeswalker and destroy planeswalker if needed. So it's very useful for 5 mana. You can get rid of almost anything you would need to get rid of. But what we want to do is 8 mana. So again, you can still destroy something you want to do. You know, destroy something with 10 toughness, like a let's say you want to take down a tree folk token made by Resident 7. You can pay 8, kill the token, and deal 5 damage to 10 damage to your opponent. Or you can obviously deal 10 to Resident 7 and the token to get rid of both of them. So we don't have to worry about them trying to make another one later on. So I got a lot of synergy there. Of course, like I said, for 8 you can do 10 damage to 2 targets. So you can kill 2 creatures if you need to, multiple planeswalkers, whatever you want to do. So really versatile card, depending on how you use it. But it's our main win con. Obviously, the idea is to pay 8, do 10 to our opponent for a game. Once we get them down to 10. In order to do, let's say, 15 to our opponent, we would need to pay 3 for each X. So that's 9 plus the 2, so that's 11. So it costs 11 mana. You have to be able to produce 11 mana in order to do 15 damage to 3 targets. 1 being your opponent, and 2 of anything else, like 2 creatures or whatever. So in order to do 15 to your opponent, you're going to need 11 mana. But that's why I always aim for the 8, because 8 is easier to obtain, especially with our plundering Barbarian, creating treasure tokens. So it's not that hard to get to 8. So that's why I aim for that. Pestilent Cauldron. Discard a card, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with the ability that when it dies, you gain a life. So this is another way of gaining life in the deck, and of course creating a chump blocker, something to take hits for us to help us stall long enough to get combo pieces. Has the pay 1 tap, and each opponent knows cards equal to the amount of life you gain this turn. You could combine this obviously with the effect of Dawnbringer, because you gain 2 life from Dawnbringer. So you gain 2 life from this, pay 1 for this, and then your opponent mills 2. And if you have Teleportation Circle, you can obviously untap Dawnbringer. You can remove Dawnbringer from play, bring him back, and gain life. Something you can do obviously is in the same turn in which you play him, right? Play him, gain 2 life. End your turn, blink him out, bring him back in, gain 2 more lives. So that's 4 life that turn. Since it's still at the end of your turn, trigger Pestilent Cauldron to make your opponent mill 4. So but then after that, it's just you're just only doing 2 cards a turn. And then of course the Pestilent tokens can help you trigger this effect. So if you have 2 of these in play, you use 1 to make a token, the other one to mill, so that way you have a little bit of mill control strategy to make it hard for your opponent to draw anything good, which is always good to make them not do is draw good. Then of course, as the pay 4 tap, exile 4 target cards from a single graveyard to draw a card. And typically we target our opponent's graveyard for this. So it becomes a draw engine, after a couple turns. Teleportation Circle. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target artifact or creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. And we use this mainly on creatures so we can get to the battlefield effects. Zariel +1 ability gives creatures you control +1 and they gain haste. So this is useful for the turn in which you make tokens or play a battle card. You just pump them up so you can deal more damage. Or you can just create a 1/1 red devil token with the ability that when it dies, deal 1 damage to any target as a chump blocker defense. And those are the only abilities that we use on this card. The mana base, you can mess around with it, try to improve it, because you just want to make sure you always consistently have the ability to play your stuff. Definitely want the ability to play Crackle, so you need at least 2 red mana, 2 black mana, 1 white mana. That's all you really need. But definitely you're going to need 2 red, 2 black at the minimum to be able to play out the deck. And that's the end of it.